Experiments have shown that oxygen toxicity often hits instantly. Many experienced divers, who understandably live in fear of this deadly phenomenon, had no idea it was possible for oxygen toxicity to sneak up on you so gradually until they heard James Miller's story. However, for those experienced enough and brave enough to explore it, the rewards are nothing short of breathtaking. This is the disintegration of James Miller and his two friends who were experienced divers. Miller, in particular, had over 20 years of experience. He was also formerly a colonel in the U.S. Army. Miller knew that in order to dive such a long and deep cave system, they would need to be prepared with several different bottles of decompression gas. James Miller and his friends had each brought a total of 4 different deco gas mixtures. One for diving down to 20 feet, one for when they reached 70 feet, one when they reached 120 feet, and a final deco gas bottle for when they eventually reached 240 feet and below. Decompression gas, or deco gas for short, is a mixture of nitrogen and oxygen. Depending on the mixture, deco gas might be suitable for diving at 50 feet or diving at 150 feet. This is important because divers who go on deep dives, 100 feet and beyond, need to ascend gradually to avoid decompression sickness, one of the deadliest and most agonizing acute ailments a human being can get. For related reasons, you cannot breathe pure oxygen safely if you're more than 20 feet underwater. Therefore, the further down you go, the lower the levels of oxygen should be in your deco gas mix. The dive began at a section called Whiskey Still Sink, and the group of 3 swam through a shallow conduit and eventually arrived at another section called Innisfree Sink. It was from this spot that the deeper descent was to begin. For the first time so far, the team all stopped so they could each switch deco gas bottles. The Wakulla Sinks cave system is located near Tallahassee. This almost mythical underwater labyrinth extends a whopping 32 miles under the surface of the state of Florida, reaching astonishing depths as low as 350 feet. The cave system also boasts some remarkable features, including a massive room called the Black Abyss that is 160 feet from floor to ceiling. It also houses numerous rare creatures that can only be found there, including the Woodville karst cave crayfish and the Florida cave isopod. Many cave divers view this particular system with a mix of admiration and trepidation. As you might imagine, it's not for beginners. The extraordinary length and depth of the cave mean you had better know what you're doing, or you may never even be found, let alone rescued. It was at this moment that James Miller made a critical mistake. He dropped one of the bottles. The metallic cylinder sank down below, eventually disappearing into the menacing darkness. Although it was a startling setback, James believed that it had probably been the bottle intended for 70 feet below. Although it wasn't ideal, he figured he'd be okay using the 120-foot bottle until they reached 120 feet and beyond. But he was wrong. The bottle James had dropped was the 240-foot bottle, the one that he would need for the very deepest recesses of the cave. Unaware of this, the group continued onward and further downward. Soon, they switched to their 120-foot bottles, and eventually, it came time to switch from their 120-foot bottles to their 240-foot bottles. James Miller and his friends were now swimming at a depth way beyond the reach of any natural daylight, where few divers, however experienced, ever dare to descend. It was critical for survival that all 3 divers had brought properly prepared deco gas bottles for this extreme depth. Breathing too much oxygen at this point could spell doom beyond all their worst nightmares. But unbeknownst to anyone at the time, James Miller didn't have the correct deco gas bottle. He had dropped it without realizing which one he had dropped. Now, at the ultimate stage of the ultimate cave dive, he switched mistakenly from the 120-foot bottle to the 70-foot bottle, the one he thought he had dropped further back. James now thought he was breathing deco gas suitable for 240 feet, but he was actually breathing deco gas that was only suitable for 70 feet. In other words, he was breathing in more than 3 times the level of oxygen that's safe for the depth he was at. Eerily, nobody noticed anything right away as they continued their descent. Not even James. They continued their dive for a little under 1 hour. It was only when it came time to turn around and head back out that trouble began. And it began fast. On the way out, James Miller suddenly succumbed to oxygen toxicity, seemingly out of nowhere. Miller stopped and began convulsing. He was having a seizure hundreds of feet underwater in the longest underwater cave in the country. Stunned and panicked, his friends quickly attended to the thrashing Miller, but their efforts were hopeless. Being experienced divers themselves, they may have realized what must have been happening. They would have then tried to feed Miller the correct gas mixture from one of their own rebreathers. However, this would have been impossible because Miller's jaw had locked shut due to the seizure he was having. In the end, there was simply nothing they could do. James Miller's horrific death sent shock waves through the cave diving community. Many felt that Miller would have been the last person they'd expect to fall victim to an event like this. In the immediate aftermath, questions were raised about how such an accident could even happen the way it did. The first thing that was alarming to people was the fact that Miller could have dropped such a vital survival tool without him or the other two divers realizing it. To describe plunging 240 feet and below without the right deco gas as a dangerous act would be a massive understatement. It virtually guaranteed James Miller's demise. Yet, despite surely having opportunities to do so, nobody in the group discovered this lethal threat. Another mystery was the amount of time it took for Miller to succumb to oxygen toxicity. Miller breathed excess oxygen for nearly an hour while swimming in the darkest recesses of the cave system. How he managed to do this without experiencing any symptoms worth relaying to his colleagues is hard to answer. The story is a testament to the dangers of such an extreme cave system. It is also proof that no matter who you are or how well you prepare, mistakes can happen even to the best. You truly never know which descent into the dark, beautiful waters will be your last. Jim Miller's death is a reminder for us or for adventure lovers to not overestimate our abilities when we're literally going up against forces of nature. Do share your thoughts in the comments below about one should opt or avoid cave diving. Thanks for your wonderful comments. See you all in the next video.